Happiness. What a gift to attain happiness. Well, happiness is an event. You come to a wedding, a bar mitzvah, a circumcision, ceremony, a birthday party. Happy birthday party, you're all happy. You're in a state of happiness. But then comes the concept of joy. Joy is a state of mind that is continuous. It's not just affected by where you're at the moment, by the music you're listening to, by the event you're celebrating, but rather joy is something that's more internal and also eternal, something that's constant in a state of joy. King David had a very difficult life. He was pursued most of his life, and people wanted to kill him, wanted to destroy him, wanted to take him down. David faced Goliath. King David got to conquer Israel. But King David wrote in Psalm 100 these words, Ivdu es Hashem besimcha. You must serve God with joy, which means no matter what comes our way, no matter what is thrown towards us, we need to maintain a state of joy. Now, a state of joy definitely includes in itself as happiness, but joy is a state of mind. As a matter of fact, the Torah teaches us that it is a commandment. V'hayita ach sameach. You should only be joyous. In this week's Torah portion, in Deuteronomy, the chapter Kitovo, there is a whole litany of tragedies that will befall us in the course of our journey of life. And right in the midst of all the darkness, there's a verse that says, why would anyone be subjected to this? Is because they did not serve God with joy. So serving God is about serving Him with joy, with happiness, with a happy heart, a good heart, a joyous heart. Well, this is easily done when life is good. When life is, as they say, rosy and peachy. It's easy to be happy and joyous. That's no challenge. The challenge gets, what happens when the going gets tough? Now, how are we supposed to employ in our heart and mind a level of joy, to a level of happiness? Now that is what I want to share with you, some thoughts. And I want you to be able to appreciate my own personal life's journey and perhaps yours, and how where you, as I did, are able to find joy no matter what. My first name is Yisroel. I was born in 1961, which was the 200th anniversary of the passing of the great Rabbi Yisroel Baal Shem Tov. He is the founder of all Hasidim. He was the first Rebbe, the first rabbi of Hasidim. And he was born at a time when the world has just went through a very difficult, almost like they refer to as a mini Holocaust, where hundreds of thousands of Jews were murdered on the Chmelnytsky uprising in Russia, and the Jewish community was terribly downtrodden. It was a very difficult time. Rabbi Yisroel Baal Shem Tov was a gift to the world to turn things around, to rise up a nation who has been decimated, a nation who is so distraught. And he introduced a novel concept, the concept of serving God with joy is not just academically, but in practice. And he began teaching the teachings of Hasidim, which means we serve God not out of fear, but rather out of love. When you're serving God with love, you are happy to serve God. Our observance of the laws and the commandments and the studying of Torah is not because we fear God, we're fearing to burn in hell, etc. On the contrary, we're serving God out of love because we love God as a father, as a loving parent. And when we serve, you want to serve with joy. And the Baal Shem Tov introduced the concept of singing and dancing and praying at the same time. This was a novel approach. It was never introduced into Jewish prayer liturgy, to sing as you pray, to dance as you pray. And he introduced this concept of joy, of being happy from the moment we wake up till we go to sleep. Being happy means that we appreciate what we got. It's not like the hardships go away. It's how we allow the hardships to affect us. Life needs to be served with joy. We have so much more in life that we can point our fingers on to be happy, to serve God with joy, with happiness, just by being alive, by waking up in the morning and being able to function and have all of our bodily functions work systematically, and being able to go to work and go to pray and love our family. There's so much we need to focus on that could bring us in a state of joy. And thus has the Baal Shem Tov launched himself into this program, which is serving God with love and with joy. And growing up, I always knew that the Baal Shem Tov was not only a master, his name was Baal Shem Tov, the master of a good name. Not only did God endow him with a tremendous amount of powers from a miraculous perspective, and a prophet, and being a saint, and being the founder and the father of all Hasidim, but he exemplified and he demonstrated the concept of love your fellow as yourself. That was one of his greatest things. As a matter of fact, his father was 99 years old when he was dying, and the Baal Shem Tov was a young 5-year-old, and his father told him at his deathbed 2 lessons. Love everyone as yourself, and fear no one but God. And that's when the Baal Shem Tov, he was a young kid, he was an orphan at a very young age, but he went amongst the hidden saints of the time who eventually trained him and introduced him to Kabbalah, to Zohar, and he grew up to be this giant in Torah and in the world, and founded the Hasidic movement that we have today. The word Hasidim comes from the root word of chesed, of kindness. It's all about being kind. It's all about extraordinary love, unconditional love to one another. That's what a true chassid is. A true chassid is someone who does kindness and loves a fellow, and would do anything possible to share love and to share camaraderie, to share togetherness, to share unity. That's what Hasidim is all about, and that's what the Baal Shem Tov set us out to teach. But the ingredient to all that is joy and happiness. And this is something that I personally have been able to incorporate in my own life. As a young child, I grew up and I realized that I need to be able to adapt this way of life, of always being happy, always greeting people with a smile, always being able to make people laugh, and just be happy with everything that you have. And when you put yourself in a state of happiness, then you become happy. Then the joy becomes not only true, but becomes infectious, that the people you are around want to be around you because you are joy. The last 3 years have been exceedingly challenging for myself. I've been through a very difficult time period of life with life's challenges that have come my way. And what I've been through was enough to be able to throw you into a very depressive and despair. But that did not happen to me. I've been through what most rabbis have never been through or experienced. I've been through a lot with many in humanity have not been through. And I've had a lot of reason to fall into despair and to be able to fall into a melancholy state, into depression, but I did not. As a matter of fact, all the hardships that I've been through, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I have learned from it and I have grown from it because I was able to focus on the positive parts of life and not to focus what I don't have or what happened to me or what I have done, but rather what I yet can still do. And not to take the 40 years that preceded me and ignore it, but rather be proud of it. And as we do it every year on Yom Kippur, we do an accounting to our own personal lives and see what life was before, what is, and what will be. Surviving a mass shooting, facing a terrorist face to face, looking down the barrel of an AR-15, and witnessing the death of a very dear congregant and friend, and being permanently maimed by losing my index fingers, the PTSD that I live with from day to day, and everything that I've been through since should be enough reason to throw me off kilt and to paralyze me. But as a chassid, as a follower of the Baal Shem Tov and all his leaders afterwards, I have been able to compartment and put these things in different compartments and not allow it to paralyze me. Because that's what darkness and evil wants to do. It wants to rob you of life. It wants to rob you from continuing rather than propelling you and moving forward. And that is what the gift of joy is. That when you're able to take all the negativism in life and all the darkness that life throws at you and put it away in a box, put it away in a compartment, but rather your core is still going to be joy. Your core is still going to have the sense of happiness because you're able to focus on the good things that are still there in life and not to fall into despair at all. God's presence does not rest unless it's a place of joy, our sages tell us. Joy is a state of mind. Joy is a state of your soul. Joy is an aura, an atmosphere that you create. The Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the father of Chabad Hasidim, whose also birthday is tonight, writes in his book, the Tanya, that if you have two soldiers, one soldier is going to war, fully armed and equipped with all the arms he needs to fight a war, but he is down, out, and depressed, versus a soldier who doesn't have much arms to defend himself, but his state of mind is joyous, he will have a better chance in being victorious. And the Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe brings this parable for us to realize our better success rate in making it through day, making through life, is to do it with a smile, is to do it with a happy heart, with a joyous heart, with a great attitude. And no matter what, always be in that state of joy. Over the 40 years that I've been a rabbi, I've been asked, Rabbi, what do you drink? What are you on? You always seem to be happy. You always seem to be joyous. We've never seen you in a down, bad mood or melancholy or depressed, etc., etc. Well, that's because they haven't seen me all the time. But when they do see me, yes, I have made that resolution early on in life that I'm going to live a happy life. I'm going to live a joyous life. I'm going to make the best out of life no matter what comes my way. I am in control. I am in control. What kind of environment do I want? Do I want to come home and be happy and joyous and walk with on a cloud of happiness? And when I come home like that, everyone else responds to you like that. Or they come home depressed and despair and dark and miserable, and everyone else will be just like that. It is a mirror. The way you choose to be, that's the way your environment is going to be. Let me share with you a story of one of our great rabbis of recent years. His name is Rabbi Mendel Futterfass. He was sentenced by Stalin government for helping to help Jews flee Russia. and he was sentenced to Siberia and hard labor. And he spent decades there. Very difficult, hard labor. But he too was a chassid par excellence. And he too was able to maintain a level of joy, even under the harshest times in Siberia. When he came out, they asked him, Rabbi Mendel, how were you able to laugh your way through hard labor? How were you able to be in such a joyous mode in the harshest of times? So he told just a story, which is quite telling. Well, one of the things in the hard labor was he was hired, or he was forced into labor to be a rider, horse and wagon rider, to drive goods around Siberia. In order to be able to do that, you need to pass the test. So they taught him all the rules, how to ride a horse and how to utilize the wagon, etc. When it came time to testing him, the examiner asked him, what happens if the 2 feet of the front legs of the horse falls into quicksand? What do you do? And the rabbi says, well, I go to the back of the horse and I tickle his back legs, and that will pull his front legs out. I says, okay, what happens if the hind legs start getting quicksand? He said, well, I go to the front legs, I tickle the front legs, and the hind legs fall out, or jump out. Then the examiner asked him, what happens if all 4 feet of the horse sink in quicksand? What do you do? So Rabbi Mendel looks at him and says, I don't know what you do, but what I do, I run around the horse. I look the horse in its eyes, and I start to laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh as loud as I could. The examiner looks at him and says, sir, you answered every question correctly, but this last one? When all 4 feet are in quicksand, you laugh? Why are you laughing for? So Rabbi Mendel looks and says, when 2 feet fall in, you have the other 2 feet to help. But when all 4 feet are sinking, there's absolutely nothing anyone could do in the world. So I run around and I look at this poor horse. What should I do? Is crying going to help? Crying is not going to do anything. Might as well laugh. And that's why I laugh. Sad parable of a horse sinking in quicksand, but the moral of the story is quite obvious. When we're faced in life with impossibilities, what's crying going to do? What's sadness going to do? What's melancholy going to do? What's depression going to do? Nothing. Rather, if you're able to snap out of that phase, because that's what the evil inclination wants us to do. It wants to drag us down, it wants to break us. But rather, when you start laughing at life, when you start having a state of mind of joy, of happiness, focusing on what is good in life, and then you realize this too shall pass. By creating an environment of joy, of happiness, you are inviting that the darkness should go away. The joy and the happiness, as our sages tell us, Simcha poretz geder, joy breaks through all barriers. There's nothing more powerful than the gift of joy. How to get to joy is to be able to have the equipment necessary to put you in that state. And that is by studying the Torah, reading prayers, and learning from our ancestors how they dealt with difficult situations. And realizing that at the end of the day, we need to dance through life laughing versus the opposite. When you dance with joy, you're creating a conducive and open atmosphere for God's presence to rest. Because God wants to be in a place where there's joy and there's happiness. This is an attitude that we can all attain. I have lived with it throughout my 61 years, throughout my 40 years of being the rabbi, every day I found something to be happy about. Even the hardest of times, even the most difficult times that I have been through, I found something to focus my happiness and my joy. Most importantly is to not to beat yourself up, but rather to be happy of who you are. To recognize that we're all human, we all make mistakes. That's the way God created us. But we need to grow from our mistakes. Not only not to do the same mistakes again, but to eradicate that type of behavior. But that can only be done when you feel good about yourself, when you're happy for yourself, when you're happy about yourself. When you bring happiness home, you're bringing God's cloud of spirit into your home. So let us take every moment of life and make it a happy moment. Let happiness follow you. As King David in Psalm 23, Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yimei chayai. Only goodness and kindness will pursue me all the days of my life. Be happy, be glad, be joyous. Tomorrow will be a happier and a better day. God bless you. God loves you.